few weeks ago, I was hangry and feeling some stress, and I reacted to a situation in a way that was inconsistent with who I am, who I want to be, and how I want to interact with those around me. Now, these situations will happen in our lives as souls having a human experience. We're not perfect and we don't have all this figured out. We don't have all of our reactions and our triggers and our emotions fully sorted. However, it's important for us to use these experiences that may not be so positive as points of reflection and an awareness for those triggers and how we can progress, how we can show up the way that we actually want to show up in our lives and with our people. I've used this before, but that Maya Angelou quote of "when you know better, you can do better" is really a life motto for me. So I wanted to use this video to help me process and provide some tips and some practical ways and steps and tools for you to bring awareness, surprise, to these situations, to have some reflection, and to be able to use these situations as growing and learning opportunities so that you can behave even under pressure and stress and while hangry in a way that is consistent with who you truly are as a human and as a soul and through your soul journey and your soul growth. Now, with that said, this is about taking responsibility for our behavior and for our reactions, but it's also taking responsibility while still having compassion and love and understanding for ourselves through that process. It's easy to chastise ourselves. It's easy to be like, bad person, all of that when we've had those types of reactions. But this video is to help you to recognize your responsibility while not criticizing and chastising and beating yourself up. So still holding yourself with love and compassion while taking responsibility for your behavior. So surprise, the first step, as always, I've already hinted at it, is awareness. Bringing awareness to the behavior, the pattern, the situation, the reaction that you have, the interaction or exchange of energy, or the thought pattern that you're experiencing. Once you are able to bring awareness to this situation or to this reaction, the next step here is to identify the difference in your self-talk or how you're speaking about yourself or what you're saying in your head upon whatever that experience has been, whatever that reaction has been. And to identify whether the way that you're speaking to yourself is using it as a noun or using it as a verb. So the thing here is you, as a human, as a soul, as a person, you are not bad. You behaved in a way that was out of alignment. You behaved in a angry or negative way. But you are not bad. So bringing it back to awareness, again, first step of awareness is just recognizing the situation and kind of the leading up events and those sorts of things, some reflection on what's going on, what those triggers are. The second piece here is bringing awareness into the language that you're using. So whether it is speaking about yourself or whether it is speaking about someone else. So that terminology, that way of phrasing things, I couldn't remember where exactly I'd heard it or how I had come across it, but it had to do with childhood development. And instead of telling a child that the child is bad for doing something, you address the behavior, not the individual. So you begin to address it as an action that has been taken versus a personality failure or a personality flaw that is part of somebody's internal identity, including yourself. So begin to recognize not only how you speak to yourself, but also how you speak about someone else, because sometimes it's a little easier to address how you're speaking when it is actually verbal, or you're thinking about somebody else, or you're speaking to someone about someone else. And you can notice if you are speaking about them in a way that addresses them as the individual or addresses the behavior. So start to play around with that a little bit. And we'll make that a little bit more concrete through a step-by-step example. So something happens, or you have a reaction, and that internal self-talk could be I'm angry, or I'm bad, or what's wrong with me, I'm always angry. So that, like, those sorts of words, those sorts of phrases where you're identifying and addressing yourself as an individual. You're addressing who you are as an identity. Once you notice that, the next step here is to put some space between your identity and the behavior. So what that could look like is adding in the word feeling. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling fat. Those are ways to just distance your identity from a feeling or from a behavior or from how you perceive yourself identity. You could also add a label about behaving or acting in a certain way. So again, what that could look like is I behaved out of frustration, or I reacted in an angry way, or I reacted in a negative way. Instead of I'm angry, I'm bad, I'm wrong, it's I behaved in a way that was angry or came from a place of anger. Again, what you're trying to do is distance I am from whatever that reaction or whatever that previous identity was. So you're just creating some space between the words, whether that be internal self-talk or whether that be speaking about someone else. And this simply removes the identity, your identity, that person's identity, from a behavior. Now, as I said at the beginning, none of this is to remove the responsibility for the behavior. It's just to remove the identity from the behavior. Because once we remove the identity, it's easier to address the behavior and change the behavior. When we're trying to change our identity, there's a really long way to go there. So, and it hurts. It hurts a lot to try and address your identity. So when you can create some space between your identity and a behavior, or your identity and a feeling, if it's I am fat and changing it to I feel heavy or I feel fat, you're moving that just a little bit so that you can address who you are as a human without the perception of who you are and a feeling or a behavior. And then from here, you can actually take some ownership and make some changes and address the behavior itself, because you don't feel like you personally are being criticized, or that you can't change your identity because it's not of you. It's not of your identity, your perception of yourself. So changing a behavior makes this more attainable. And if it is a reactionary situation, the next step here is to reflect back on the trigger. So in my situation, it was pretty obvious. I was hangry and I had an unexpected stressor that happened. So yeah, I hadn't eaten, but like I wasn't expecting that stressor to take place. But it could also be a certain situation or a certain trigger or a certain other person that sets off this chain of events. So take some time to reflect and to recognize where it came from and if there is a pattern there. Now, this is a practice because you might not automatically be able to head it off before it even starts. In my situation, I actually could, I'm at the point where I watched myself react. So it wasn't even like I was reacting without being aware of it. I was at the point where I could watch myself react in that moment. So I'm really close to being able to head it off at the pass. And most of the time I am able to head it off, but sometimes something slips through, my defenses are down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, I can see that reaction happening. So the first step is reacting after the fact. Well, actually, the first step is being completely oblivious. The second step is noticing after the fact and reflecting on it. Then it's noticing in the moment, oh wow, I can see myself having this reaction. If you can, stop yourself mid-reaction. And then the final kind of process here is to be able to catch yourself before it even happens. And you may notice that in some instances, some triggers, you're able to catch yourself before it happens. In other triggers, you find yourself in the middle of it and you're like, oh, pulling back, or you find yourself in the middle of it aware of what you're doing. And in some instances, you're at that reflection point. It just depends on what the trigger is. So have compassion for yourself no matter what, because this is a practice. Which brings me to the final practice I want to share in this video, and it is a breathing mindfulness practice that you can do in your day-to-day life. It really isn't something that requires any additional effort or time, and we're going to practice together. But what it is it's simply bringing your attention to your breath, and specifically noticing the moments at the bottom of your breath and the moments at the top of your breath. And those moments are these pauses. They are a hang time. It's not that you're retaining or holding your breath or you're forcing the air out and contracting in it. It's just a noticing of this lengthening of time and space that happens at the top and at the bottom of your breath. So I invite you to take a moment. If you are somewhere safe while you're doing this, you can always close your eyes. Otherwise, just bring your awareness to your breath and then begin to watch your breath flow in and watch your breath flow out. And as you watch your breath flow in, just notice there's a little moment of hang time at the top of your breath, and then release your air back out again. And there's a little moment of hang time at the bottom of your breath, and then allow your body to breathe the air back in again. Notice the hang time at the top. Softly release the air. Notice the hang time, the pause at the bottom. And softly allow your lungs to fill back up again. Just continuing on for a few more moments. Again, you're not constricting, you're not counting your breath. It's still just your natural breath, but you're bringing your mindfulness, your awareness to those pauses that happen at the top and at the bottom of your breath. Ever so softly. And for me, that practice really allows me to notice in life and be able to take that step back and to watch either a reaction or to watch myself building up to a reaction or to stop myself before the reaction happens or to recognize and reflect on it. So one, that breath cycle is helping you be an observer. So again, you're removing identity from behavior. It allows you to be an observer of your breath and of your experience. And secondly, it helps to recognize those moments of pause that happen on every breath, whether they are conscious or unconscious, whether they are short or whether they are a little bit more expanded and inflated. So I hope that all helps for you. I hope you are able to use these tools in your life. If you're interested in some one-on-one coaching, the information for all of that is down in the description box below. If you like these videos, you know the drill. Click that subscribe button, notification bell, give it a thumbs up. I will put up a couple more videos or playlists for you to check out, and I will see you in the next video.